well, what about Rangers and the predicament that any manager of Celtic and Rangers has? And I noticed that the chairman, John Bennett, has come out, and he's obviously trying to be as transparent as he possibly can be about the upheaval that Rangers have suffered with the stadium. Obviously the blueprint that the manager has and the club wants to go down, I think it's a similar strategy that they'd like to employ that Celtic have displayed over the last 5 to 10 years. Is it enough to satisfy the fans who are crying out about having to go to Hampden? Is it enough that they're looking and saying, well, is there enough quality coming in? Are they happy with the players that are going out? John Bennett's doing his best to try and offer as much as he possibly can from a boardroom perspective.
It's not enough for the fans, but that sometimes should not be the defining criteria, because at times in a football club you've got to say, see what we're doing is right. There's a lot of noise out there, but what we're doing is right. We believe in what we're doing, it's right, and it's going to... The problem with Rangers is they've talked about this transfer model for, what, 4 or 5 years? Yeah. We've got to do this transfer model. And then when it's come to implementing a transfer model, they went, oh no, we've got to win the league this year, so let's buy... let's spend all our money on players that are 26, 27.
Yeah, and I think that's what John Bennett was talking about. That they've been guilty of a short-term view.
He's been on that board that's been guilty of it.
Yeah, but the only thing I would say about
case in point.
The only one thing I would say about him being on that board, though, Hugh, is, and I might be wrong, but I see less and less of what I would call 4 or 5 people all offering an opinion, because Bisgrove's gone. Suddenly Douglas Park's away from the thing. If I was looking at that Rangers board right now and saying, well, who is the figurehead? John Bennett suddenly has come to the fore, and all of the noise and the people who wanted to have their tuppence worth thrown in has gone away. And I think that, I think that's a positive step. I mean, because I think if you've got one person who's driving a Dave Cormack who suddenly is there, an Anne Budget Hearts, to an extent at Celtic it was always Peter Lawwell. Michael Nichols is not as at the forefront, but certainly Peter Lawwell was at Celtic for 20 years. So you have someone who's driving the narrative. But with the Rangers now, I think they're slowly getting to that. I accept he was on the board, but he did say, we've been guilty. Hands up, we've been guilty of that short-term view.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, they've got to now say, and I think in his rhetoric the other day, in his 20-minute address to the nation, he was quite clear, and it was all caveats and backstops and things like that. But when she went through it, he said, they're talking about there is no money. We've spent 11 million already since the beginning of the year. You're basically not getting more until we can regenerate. Now, most fans, it's always the same with transfer models. Most fans will say, of course we've got to do this. Of course, we've got to do that. But when you do it, they crack up. Most fans will say, isn't it great that, we buy Matt O'Reilly for 1.5 million and he's at least a £15 million player now. He'll go for more, but I think that's the latest bid. So you've increased it tenfold. And everybody will say, oh, isn't that great? Until he goes... and you bring in Jimmy Bloggs, or to replace him, they go, well, what are you doing here? And it's the same. It's like what I got from. I wonder if you got the same from me. I thought Bennett was saying, listen, the shop's shut, and we're going to maybe have to suck up years not won the league. That was the undertone I got. I mean, he couldn't say that, but he's saying it's unsustainable to us to win 2, 3 titles, and it might be even
because it takes investment.
It takes investment, and it takes time.
Yeah, but if you're John Bennett, Alison, and you, with the board, are saying, right, here's our strategy. We need to move away from this short-termism. We need to start buying players that we see as a long-term investment, that we might be able to sell on. The Ryan Kent mistakes and the Morelos ones, we've got to forget about that. And he's sitting there on the board, they're all agreeing, and then all of a sudden, somebody chaps his door and says, by the way, there's a problem here with the stand. And then all of a sudden, here comes a bill. And then all of a sudden they say, and there's a delay. Now, you can make jokes or listen to the noise on social media. The fact, whether it's delays in steel or whether it's caught up in one ship, is irrelevant. The fact is Rangers have to move to Hampden. So he's got that in the equation, which has come out of left field. And suddenly he's saying to himself, well, maybe that extra bit of money that we were going to give to Philippe Clement is gone. Because I think Philippe Clement is looking and saying, the vision that I was sold.
I don't think there's any doubt of that. If you think, well, what are the undertones of that 20-minute address this week? What have been the undertones of Philippe Clement this summer? I think that's exactly what he said. I think it's a very, very difficult position that Rangers are in. I don't think there's any genuine funds to go and say, as he did when Steven Gerrard came in, right, there's a concerted effort here to go and challenge for the title. I think there's a realism now that you can't compete with what Celtic have got because financially they're in a different plane, they're in a different orbit from anyone else in a domestic sense, Rangers included. I think there has been lessons not learned repeatedly. You talk about Kent on Morelos, and Celtic, I think, maybe were guilty of it sporadically. You look at Artur Boruc, there might have been the odd example of keeping a player too long and losing a significant amount of money, but by and large, across the last 2 decades, it's been hugely successful, and it's been a restructure that was always traditionally, since about 2003, from when the club said, or 2004, it cost us money to get to Seville, it cost us money to, we didn't make money this season, the whole structure has to change, the wage bill has to come down, and it's largely been successful. But the point is that it's not easy to do. It's not easy to go and source a Matt O'Reilly and sell him for 10 times. It takes a huge amount of work in the background and luck too. You can do all your due diligence. Sometimes it comes down to luck. If you look at the success stories against the failures, have been a significant amount of failures, but your success stories largely bypass it. Rangers just haven't been able to get that right at all. They've not been able to do it, and part of it is as well, you need a strength, because Peter Lawwell has never really had credit for that. It's been criticism, it's been a perception of being parsimonious, it's a perception of always wanting to do things cheaply. It's not, you have to be quite a strong figure to be able to say, this is the way we're going to do it. And when everyone is kicking off, when you see the success, people still complain about it, people are still critical of it, people aren't entirely buying in to the vision of what you're doing. You have to be very, very strong as a board to say, to stay entrenched and to keep the belief that what you're doing is the right thing to do.
But that's the point that I think David Robson was making in the newspaper over this week, when he said, you know, as a former Rangers player, you need that stability. John Bennett needs to show the backing of Philippe Clement to say, okay, while I try and get this difficult structure that you're talking about, and while you've got this group of players, I'm going to stick with you. Let's stick with this blueprint. It's going to be a real test of nerve and a test of the fans' patience, because I don't think they have it.
You're dealing in a culture, and even Bennett alluded to this all the way to his win. If you win, I wonder many times the word win. I know we've got to win. Rangers are all about winning, win. So you've got a fan base that's all about winning, you know, for right or wrong.
Dominant.
But you imagine John Bennett sitting in there. He's put, I don't know how many millions of his own money he's put in. He's packed in, he's packed in working. He's now full time. He's packed in working. They made him a very wealthy man. He was a very successful hedge fund investor. How many millions has he put into Rangers without any chance of getting it back? Let's be honest, it's confetti stuff. And even if they sell the club and that, he's the only. And he's sitting there, and he's walking out the eyebrows, and there's a crane on the park, right? A big crane. And everybody's screaming at him, transparency, transparency, transparency. And his answer to that is, I think ship 2 will be sailing at, well, they say it'll be sailing at such and such time, but it's got to go into Singapore. And ship 3, well, and this is no John, this is him trying to be transparent, and he can't be So he's got all of that, then he's got to do what Clement incredibly said, what Celtic doing is a renovation, what we're doing is a rebuild, right? So he's got that. Now, maybe at one time everybody settles down and says, right, we're at a Hampden, we suck it up, blah, blah, blah. We're going for a long term. Again, I take you back to Jimmy Doolan, only to the nth degree. I'm talking about a November morning. The Rangers have lost the first Glasgow derby. They're 4 points behind the league. And they go to Ross County and they get beat 2-0. Well, everybody's saying, do you know what? We're all in it for the long term.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. We've got the strategy right. We're back at Ibrox. The stadium's fixed. We've got Diamandi. He looks like he'll be a player later on. And we, Igamandi, you know, and this wee boy here and that boy. And everyone's going to be fine in 2025 or 2026. That's a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
First one's the qualifiers. The first big headache. The first. That is your first test is this, and that sets a tone. That sets an immediate tone, and if that's not successful, the hangover from that is incredulous. And you've seen it.
What was Saturday? High noon on Saturday.
Yeah, but I think you've hit the nail on the head, Alison. Yes, you can lose. I mean, Dick Advocaat lost the opening game to Hearts at Tynecastle. This is not a Dick Advocaat team, by the way. I'm not trying to draw comparisons. I'm just saying you can lose a game, an opening one. Celtic lost 2 opening games with
Tynecastle under Ange Postecoglou.
Well, with Wim Jansen, and they were calling for his head after
Henrik Larsson's debut against the Road.
So I think from that point of view, you know, John Bennett can stay focused on that. But one of the things that I think John Bennett and the board will be looking at and thinking long and hard about is, this is a real roll of the dice on the finances if we could get to the group stages of the Champions League.
It's massive. You cannot... This is the biggest game for Rangers, I think. These qualifiers, you cannot underestimate how huge they are because they shape the very future now of the club.
The biggest qualifier since 2012.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge because it is the finances at the Champions League, and obviously we all know what the Champions League is this season about the reformat, and you're banking, you know, an estimated probably 50 million to 60 million pounds. It is altering. It alters entirely the complexion of the finances at the club. And
it could help John Bennett and the Rangers board with that structure moving forward for the next couple of years. So
also, though, it places an incredible amount of pressure on the manager and the playing staff. It turns the focus again onto them too. Now, given we all know the nature of these games, they come so early. It's difficult. They're really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Rangers fans out there, give us your thoughts on John Bennett's comments and what you think about the playing staff, and of course, being allowed the time. Would you sacrifice 1 or 2 years on the way to just get that structure right and moving forward with a successful transfer policy and recruitment policy just to get it right long term, or do you think it needs a short term hit once again?